Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by the CEO of Prestige Fight Club MMA, Crowthers. Cord, how are you?
Mike, I'm doing fantastic. How are you tonight?
Doing good. Thanks for asking. Cord, you have an event coming up, Prestige FC2, taking place on March 12th, headlined by 2 title fights. We'll get to that event in just a second, but let's go back to your first event that took place back in October, Prestige FC1. Overall, what letter grade would you give for your first show based on everything? Production, the fights, the attendance, the gate, everything that makes up a successful MMA event. If you had to give a letter grade on your first event, what would that letter grade be?
For sure. That was the first pro fight card in Saskatchewan's history here in Canada. Our province just got a commission about not quite a year ago, and the UFC and our company were both licensed to put on shows. So that was the first local promotion that did a show, and we did it in Weyburn, Saskatchewan. It was a sellout crowd. The fights were top-notch. I thought from front to back, we had everything under the sun. And talking to the fans afterwards and the press, I got to go with what they say, and everyone says it was the best fight card they've seen in a long time. Everyone had a great time. It went off without a hitch, and we were really proud of it.
Now, that event in October wasn't the first show that you've ever promoted. You've promoted shows in the past. Could you explain your history as a promoter and what kinds of shows you've promoted? Because a lot of people think that this show coming up on March 12th will be only the second event you've ever promoted throughout your career. So can you explain your history in promoting events?
I've been involved in the business for about 13 years. Mm-hmm. I started helping out down in Milwaukee with Duke Rufus, helping him out with his amateur shows back in the day, 10, 12 years ago. Come home to Canada. I worked with a few companies here, and we helped put on some pro-am shows. But our company, Prestige, has done a few amateur shows in the province, because that's all there was here was amateur at the time. Then we fought really hard to get a commission in place with the government. It took a couple of years to get done, but we got it done, and now we're one of the only licensed companies in the province that can put on a pro show here. So, we've done many shows in the past. That was our first pro show, and it was a fantastic time.
Will there be a lot of changes from show 1 to show 2? Will we see anything new that we didn't see back in October at that show, PFC1? Will we see different things that you're going to add in? Are there a lot of changes that you've made to the product? What exactly are we going to see new coming up on March 12th?
For sure there will be. So what we try to do as a company every show is bring a better show, a better caliber show, better matchup fights every time. We try to increase it each time. If we don't, we're not going to go anywhere. So, from the fighters that we sign and talk to and try to make up the matchups to what I call the smoke and mirrors at the show, the other stuff that isn't the fights, the fun stuff at the show that people want to see, the seminars, the meet and greets, the TV deals, down to the dinners and the VIP service. We try to increase that every time at our shows to make it an entire night out. I've said this 1,000 times. The fights are only part of the night out. If you come out to a live show for Prestige, the fights are only maybe a 50-60% part of the night. The night out is the night. We have so much going on the whole week of the fights and the night of fight night. So I think this time around we've got even higher caliber matchups and fights. If you ask me, and I've said this before, and some people said it's maybe a little cocky, this is the best fight card period in Canadian history outside the UFC. There's never been a stronger fight card from top to bottom put on in Canada, and I firmly believe that.
I'm going to assume you heard about what Patrick Cote said a little while back in an article that got a lot of traction online. I'm sorry that I don't know exactly where that article was published. I don't know where that was for the life of me. I apologize for that. But I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the article that came out a little while back that had Patrick Cote quoted in it. And in that article, Cote said, there's no shows right now in Canada that are like TKO or MFC or other shows like that, like when Patrick Cote and some of these other guys were coming up in Canada trying to make a name for themselves and eventually make the jump to the UFC. right now he says there's no organizations in Canada right now that are doing that. So I'm interested in knowing, when you read that, were you offended by what Cote said, or did that motivate you? Because on one hand, here you are, you're trying to make a push in this space. You're trying to be that organization like what Cote was talking about. You're trying to be that organization that builds fighters up and gets them into a big show, whether it's the UFC or whether it's Bellator. You're trying to be that organization, that AAA feeder league to these big shows. You're trying to fill that space. So on the one hand, I could see that it's offensive to you, but on the other hand, is it motivating for you? Because right now, you're still a very young organization. This is only going to be your second show. So was that motivating for you? Because here you are, you're in this space now, and if Cote is saying that there's no shows right now in Canada, that means that you guys don't have much competition. If he's saying that there's nobody who's doing that, and you're an organization that's trying to be what he's talking about in this article. So were you offended by what Cote said, or was that something that in the future you're going to use as motivation?
Definitely we were not offended. Patrick Cote is a great friend of mine, a personal friend of mine, and a big fan here of Saskatchewan MMA. Patrick Cote does a lot of things for us here. I think his conversation was taken a lot out of context. The point he was trying to make was there's limited shows right now, and he's absolutely right. There is. It has to do with a lot of things. It has to do with the shows that came along in the past. Most of them were fly-by-night shows. Pay a guy $1 million, put on one show, go bankrupt the next day. Mm-hmm. You know, we've all seen that a lot of times. MFC was a very successful show who Mark Pavlich decided to just sit back for a little while. He may be back. He has a successful show. But many of these shows aren't, because they're not businessmen, they're not promoters. We have a 3-year plan. We're building something great here. And over the last 13 years, I've been able to build relationships with the biggest camps, the biggest organizations in the world. So what we can do is help these fighters get from Canada or the U.S. or wherever to the UFC, to Bellator. We're not trying to be UFC or Bellator. We understand what our role is here. And we have a big show here in Canada. Frankly, we're the biggest game in town in Canada now. Hands down, there's no bigger show than ours. And Patrick's right. You know, we have to get more of these shows going. But for now, most people in the business know we are that show. We've signed some big names over the last couple of weeks you might have heard of. And a lot of our guys are going to be going to the show, to the UFC and to Bellator, and we support that fully. But for now, we're going to be doing our 3 or 4 shows a year and helping them get to where they need to be, but at the same time, making some money for ourselves and running a great promotion in Saskatchewan.
Mm-hmm. So that's still the plan going forward? One show every quarter?
Yeah, we're looking at, I'm sure you've read in the press in the last little while, we're making some big strides right now. Mm-hmm. We just signed a TV deal with the Fight Network, so our show is going to be live across Canada and parts of the States on the Fight Network. That's never been done before outside the UFC. Our show's the first. We just signed an epic partnership deal with Subway Canada and Subway Saskatchewan. You know, having Subway as part of the team and helping the athletes and our company is going to be an epic partnership. And then, of course, you know, we've got a 3-year plan. We're trying to do 3 to 4 shows a year where we can do regular shows where fighters can count on it, coaches can count on it, fans can count on it, and put our product out there. And that's our plan for the next couple of years.
Obviously, this show in March is only going to be your second event, and it's probably too early for you to answer this question, but I'll ask it anyways. How long is it going to take for your promotion to be mentioned in the same breath as RFA and Legacy and Titan FC, those organizations that I like to call mid-major promotions, because they're not the UFC, but they're not some tiny show out in the middle of nowhere that no one's ever heard of, that has no production values, and they have sub 500 fighters, and they have no TV deal. So they're not the UFC, but they're not those shows. How long is it going to take for your promotion to be mentioned? You know, those organizations, they've got fighters from all over the world trying to get on those shows because they know that if they do well there, they can get a bump up to the UFC or Bellator. How long is it going to take for you guys to be in that mix?
Well, if you would ask me that question as the owner of the company,
sure.
I'm going to tell you right now, we're already in that mix. We have bigger fighters from all over the world than most companies could ever hope to have. We have partnerships with TriStar and Duke Rufus Sports and Thomas Denny's gym and Dwayne Ludwig's gym. We have the top athletes in the world. We have over 400 athletes trying to sign with us right now. We don't have the fights for them yet. But that being said, we've only got 2 cards in. So what we can offer right now with the connections and the partnerships we have from the UFC all the way down is if you fight on our cards, you're going to get noticed. Kurt Southern, who's fighting for the title for us on this upcoming card, when or if Kurt wins this fight, the chance of him not being signed the next morning are slim to none. He's going to get signed. We've got, we just signed Maurice Jackson, a huge Bellator star, 6'9", 265 pounds. We're in talks with Matt Hamill, just joined our team. And then that's just some of the bigger names. Now from TriStar, we have a relationship. We're going to be putting many, many TriStar guys on the card, and Faraz Sahabi, and including his little brother Ayman Sahabi. These are guys that are going to the UFC tomorrow, the next day. So again, if you ask me, we're already there. But as a whole in the MMA world with the fans and how you see it in the press, we're going to be mentioning those same circles from now for the next 6 months. No more than 6 months when people know exactly who we are.
Now let's talk about your event coming up on March 12th, Prestige FC 2. It's headlined by not one but 2 featherweight title fights, one in the men's division at 145 pounds and one in the women's division at 145 pounds. You have a main event and co-main event that both feature title fights. Let's start with the main event, the men's 145-pound featherweight title. It features Kurt Southern versus Nick Rhodes. What are you expecting from this fight?
It's a great fight. Kurt being a hometown hero here in Saskatchewan and Canada, everybody up here, of course, expects him to dominate like he always does and just walk away with his title belt. But the thing is, they don't know who Nick Rhodes is. Nick Rhodes is a beast. He's coming out of Arizona and now training out of Denver. This kid's amazing. This is going to be one of the most talked about fights afterwards in a long time. We don't want to take sides here, but it's in the running for the fight of the night. There's no question there. Either kid that comes out with the win here is going to be putting his name on the platform for the big show. There's no question.
You said should Kurt Southern win this fight, you're expecting him to get the call up to the UFC. I'm just curious, why do you think that? Because Kurt Southern, last time out against Daniel Swain, he was in desperate need of a win, and he was kind of at a crossroads in his career because he had lost 2 fights back-to-back to Tom Galicchio, and he's on that 2-fight losing streak, and he was changing up his training. He was down in Colorado training with Bang Ludwig, so he was at a crossroads and on a losing streak, but now you're saying that a win here, and that makes him on a 2-fight win streak. You think that 2-fight win streak is enough to get him a call up to the UFC. Now, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'd just like to know, why do you think a win here will get Kurt Southern a shot in the UFC?
Absolutely. His last loss was a couple of years before that. Okay, he had a loss or 2, took some time off, traded camp to Dwayne Ludwig's camp down in Denver. Obviously Bang Ludwig. I've known Kurt for a long time, and I'll tell you right now, in the entire world, there's not many or stronger or better athletes mentally, physically, and ability-wise than Kurt Southern. Hands down. He had a little slip back when his mind wasn't right, and he wasn't in the right spot a few years ago. I'll tell you what, since he's come back and since the 2 years he took off to get to where he needs to be today, there's no one better. Hands down, this kid's in the UFC in the next 18 months.
Taking place in the co-main event will be the Prestige FC Women's Featherweight Championship, and it features a fighter that you're very familiar with, your wife, Charmaine Tweet. Now, before we start talking about the matchup, let's talk about Charmaine. Do you have mixed emotions about her fighting for you? Because on one hand, you have to be very excited because she's a big draw, she's fighting for a belt, she's fighting for your promotion, so you know she's going to get a payday. she's got a tough opponent. It's going to be a very interesting fight. But on the flip side of that, it has to be a little sad for you in a way. I guess sad is probably the wrong word to use, but for lack of a better term, sad, because Charmaine, who is still under contract with Invicta FC, she belongs in Invicta. She's one of the top featherweight fighters in the world right now, and she belongs in Invicta. She's been in there with all these great fighters throughout the history of her career, and she's done very well. On one hand, you got to be excited because she's fighting on your show, but on the other hand, she belongs in Invicta, and she should be fighting in the best organization in the world for her weight class, and right now, the organization that has her weight class is Invicta, and right now they're doing a great job. They've done so many great things for women's MMA. So on one hand, you got to be excited, but on the other hand, Charmaine belongs in the big show. So do you have mixed emotions about her being on this card?
No. Let's make sure that we know what we're talking about here. So Invicta is the most amazing organization, and what they've done for women in the last few years is just top notch. Charmaine has a long-term contract with Invicta, and she's one of their top prospects. She's number 1 in the world at 155. She's number 6 in the world at 145. And Invicta does everything in their power to get her on as many cards as they can. Shannon Knapp is an amazing woman, Julie Kedzie. So she was supposed to fight the night before our show in Vegas on the 11th of March. That fight fell through just a couple of weeks ago. And at the last minute, we couldn't get that fixed. So they couldn't get her another fight on that card due to the Vegas rules and regulations and medicals for her opponents. So she was open. And Invicta is kind enough and nice enough to let Charmaine fight outside of the USA when they don't have anything for her. So just because of their blessing, she's allowed to fight for us, which is amazing. So anytime that she can fight at her hometown and her home province, which has now just been, this will be the second time in her history, it's great for us. Charmaine's a huge draw here. She sells 200, 300, 400 tickets. She's famous here in her hometown. So us having her on the card is amazing, and her fighting for Invicta and having that dual relationship is just great for her. It's great for us, and she'll be back May 7th for Invicta, no problem at all.
Was it hard to find Charmaine an opponent?
That is the difficult part. So after Charmaine was supposed to be on the card in the first place, then Invicta called, they wanted her, so we took her off the card. That was the name of Queen City Coronation. There's supposed to be 2 title fights. That was the whole plan from the beginning. Then we took her off the card. Now they gave her permission to put her back on the card. Now what? Trying to find Charmaine a fight in 2 months, leave alone 2 weeks. It's near impossible to get someone to take that fight. And especially someone that's not signed to Invicta already, or the UFC. So Jessie Mille, her camp called out to us and said, look, we want that fight. You know, Jessie's 5-2. She's got a couple of title belts. She's an amazing athlete. She reached out to us, asked for the fight. We made it happen. And, you know, everyone thinks Charmaine's going to walk through every fight in her career and do this and do that. And she does. She's great. But Jessie Mille is a strong opponent from New York. This is going to be a really great fight.
Besides the main event and the co-main event, what fights on this card should we be on the lookout for? And also, what fight on this card are you excited for the most outside of the main event and the co-main event?
There's 2 fights that I keep talking about on every interview that if the fans don't know and they're not sure why they're going to a fight, these are the 2 fights. Brad Katona out of Lama, Winnipeg, taking on Josh Rich out of Toronto. Brad Katona is probably one of the strongest 135ers in the world today. Whether he only has 2 fights or 3 fights under his belt, his boxing background is ridiculous, and this kid is one of the strongest athletes I've ever met in 13 years in this business. Watch out for that fight. And of course, out of the same gym, Kyle Oliveira stepping up to take on TriStar phenom Ayman Sahabi. Ayman is the little brother of Coach Faraz Sahabi, who owns TriStar, and he's fighting for us. We've just signed Ayman to a 2-fight deal, and that fight's going on our card. So 2 135 matchups that are just spectacular.
Cord, I really appreciate you being so generous with your time. Just a couple more questions here. If there's a local fan listening right now and they want to come down and watch the event live, where do they go to get tickets, and are tickets still available?
You know, we're so excited about this. In all the years we've been doing this fight card is 98.5% sold out right now. We're 4 weeks out, and we're pretty much sold out. There are a few tickets left at reginatickets.ca. The Owner Center where we have the event is completely sold out. They don't have any right now. And then some of the fighters, the local fighters in Saskatchewan, like the Sean Quinns, the Matty Zemlaks, the Charmaine Tweets, they've got a handful in their back pocket. But we're sold out unless you call ReginaTickets.ca and you call them this week.
And what's the price range for some of the tickets that are still available? Are they all over the board, or are they mostly...
They are. They go from $159 to $100. Or pardon me. They go from $59 to $150. Again, most of those are sold. You might be able to find yourself a couple of $59 tickets. You might be able to find a couple of $89 tickets. But unless you get on it this week, you're not going to get tickets to the show. We're sold out, and we're very excited about that.
When's the next event, Prestige FC3? When's that going to be taking place? And also, are there any matchups you'd like to announce?
We're going to announce the date of the next show at our show on March 12th. It's going to be late June, early July. We've got some other things that are tied to that we have to seal before we can announce it. And then fights for that card, I can tell you that we're definitely going to have a 135 title belt on that card, and that's going to come from a lot of the fights that are on this card, and what develops of those. And I can tell you we're going to have a heavyweight title belt on that card, 100%. I'm sure you all know we just signed Maurice Jackson, 6'9", 265 pounds. Maurice Jackson will be fighting on that card for the heavyweight title belt. Who his opponent is yet, we haven't announced, but those will be two fights that will be on the card.
Cord, real quick before I let you go, where can fans keep up with you on social media? Where can they follow you? Where can they follow your organization, Prestige Fight Club MMA? Where can they follow them on social media? Do you have a website where they can log on and get more information about your promotion? Where can fans go to keep up with what you have going on and what your promotion has going on? And also, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank? Is there anything you'd like to say to the fans? Go ahead right now, plug away. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Well, on Twitter, we're at PFC Prestige. We do a lot of stuff on Twitter. Facebook is our mainstream, so it's Prestige Fight Club MMA on Facebook. We update that every few minutes with all the latest news and changes and everything. And those are the two biggest. We don't have a website. We love the social media. We're going to stay with that for now. So those are the two biggest places to check out. And I always like to give a plug to a couple of people that sponsor us. Subway Saskatchewan, Subway Canada is a new partner of ours. The Wolf 104.9 radio station here in Regina, and Stella Gear, all your needs for MMA gear. Those are our three major partners in all our shows. Without them, we couldn't do the show.
Cord, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it, and best of luck with the show coming up on March 12th.
Thank you so much, my friend.